Hello, my good friend. How are you tonight? I am Optimus Prime, the leader of the Autobots. Your companion on this journey.
Those men. I am Salahuddin.
In the echoes of time, among the whispers of history, there stands a figure, a king bound by fate, yet unshaken in spirit. His name was Baldwin IV, the leper king of Jerusalem. A ruler touched by affliction, yet ablaze with unyielding courage. Though his hands lost their feeling, though his body withered with each passing year, his heart remained steadfast, and his will burned brighter than the stars. His tale is not merely one of sorrow, but of resilience. In the grand design of destiny, where empires rise and fall like the shifting sands, Baldwin IV's story stands as a testament, a reminder that true strength is not found in the body, but in the soul. Tonight, let us walk through the corridors of time, past the towering gates of Jerusalem, and into the life of a king who refused to surrender, even as his body betrayed him.
The things that we have left undone.
A crown upon young shoulders. He was but a child when the weight of a kingdom fell upon his shoulders. Baldwin IV was born of nobility, destined for greatness, but fate had a different path in store for him. At first, the signs were subtle. A hand that felt no pain, a touch that registered nothing. But as the years passed, the truth became undeniable. Leprosy had claimed him, and with it, a life of suffering seemed inevitable.
Playing with the other boys, my arm was cut.
Yet, where others might have withered, he chose to rise. When his father, King Amalric, passed away, the throne awaited him. He was only 13. A child, not yet a man, yet called to lead a city that stood as the heart of a great and ancient struggle. His enemies were many, and doubts surrounded him like a storm. Yet Baldwin IV did not waver. He studied the ways of war, the art of diplomacy, and prepared himself for the trials ahead. And beyond the walls of Jerusalem, a shadow loomed, a figure who would shape the fate of kingdoms. His name was Saladin.
I am Salahuddin.
The Battle of Montgezard. A miracle in the sands.
Not those men.
The year was 1177. The desert winds carried whispers of war. Saladin, the great sultan, had risen to power, uniting Egypt and Damascus beneath his banner. His army was vast, his warriors relentless, and he marched toward the kingdom of Jerusalem, seeking to reclaim what had been lost. Baldwin IV, only 16, frail in body but resolute in spirit, gathered his knights. He knew they were outnumbered, their forces mere shadows against the storm that approached. Yet he did not falter. With solemn steps, he descended from his royal litter, his body trembling from the affliction that gnawed at his flesh. He knelt upon the sands of Montgezard, lifting the sacred cross high into the air, his lips whispering a prayer to the heaven. His warriors, exhausted, wounded, uncertain, watched in silence. And in that moment, as the last golden rays of the sun bathed their young king in light, something awakened within them. Hope.
My lord.
Then, with a voice that cut through the howling winds, Baldwin IV rose to his feet and declared, "Today we fight. For our land, for our people, for the Lord who watches over us. We shall not fall."
Saladin has crossed the Jordan with
The silence broke. A roar erupted from his knights, steel drawn and shields raised. The sound of faith, of defiance, of warriors ready to carve their names into history. And as the enemy approached, the earth trembled. Not with fear, but with the charge of a king who refused to bow to fate. Like two mighty waves destined to clash, the armies surged toward one another. Dust and sand spiraled into the heavens as the thunderous gallop of war horses shattered the stillness of the desert. The air filled with the deafening cries of battle, the clash of steel against steel, the screams of men who fought not for survival alone, but for something greater. Baldwin rode at the forefront, his standard raised high, leading his warriors with a fire that burned far brighter than the sickness that sought to consume him. His knights, emboldened by his unwavering spirit, struck deep into the heart of Saladin's ranks. The Sultan, a master of warfare, commanded his forces with precision, but the unexpected ferocity of the charge disrupted the cohesion of his lines. The disciplined formations of the great Muslim general began to waver.
Wonder if it would not be better if you did.
Blow after blow, charge after charge, Baldwin's warriors carved through their foes like the divine wind of destiny itself. And as the sun dipped lower, painting the battlefield in hues of crimson and gold, the banners of Saladin trembled and fell. By nightfall, the mighty forces of Saladin, once so certain of victory, had been routed. The Sultan himself, witnessing the unthinkable, withdrew from the field. What should have been an assured conquest had turned into an undeniable defeat at the hands of a king barely in the bloom of youth. A boy whose body was failing, yet whose will was unbreakable. That day, the sands of Montgizard bore witness to a miracle. Against all odds, Baldwin IV had triumphed. His name would not be spoken in whispers of pity, but in the songs of warriors and the echoes of history. Trials and sacrifice of the king. Victory at Montgizard was but the beginning of a long and arduous path. In the years that followed, Baldwin IV carried the weight of his kingdom, standing resolute in the face of ceaseless threats. Yet, as each battle was fought, as each enemy was repelled, the cost became undeniable. The sickness within him, relentless and unmerciful, tightened its grip.
Death comes.
There were moments of triumph, but also of bitter defeat. At Mar Jayun, the forces of Jerusalem suffered a crushing blow under the might of Saladin's army.
Will you yield the city?
The tides of war, ever shifting, threatened to drown Baldwin's fragile rule. And yet, where others might have surrendered to despair, he refused. He did not see himself as a dying man, but as a king, a protector of his people, a guardian of the holy city. Each day he awoke, knowing that his time grew short. Yet he did not lament. Instead, he saw every sunrise as a gift, an opportunity to serve, to fight, to endure. But time is a merciless foe. Year by year, the disease consumed him. His once strong hands, steady upon the hilt of his sword, weakened. His sight, once sharp as a falcon's, dimmed. His body, once clad in the armor of a warrior, became a prison of pain and frailty. Many would have relinquished their throne, sought the solitude of a chamber where they could fade away in peace.
You cannot be sure of your end.
But the years were cruel. One by one, the faculties of his body failed him. Soon, Baldwin the Fourth could no longer mount a horse, nor could he stand without aid. His hands, once strong upon the hilt of his sword, had lost all feeling. His wounds, unseen yet ever present, grew deeper. The world around him blurred until light itself became but a distant memory. Many in his court whispered that it was time for the king to step away, to retreat into the quiet embrace of his palace and leave the war to others. But Baldwin the Fourth was not a man of retreat.
Jerusalem. Right now.
In the year 1183, word came that Saladin's forces had encircled Kerak, a fortress standing as one of Jerusalem's most vital outposts in the east. The news was dire. Without swift action, Kerak would fall, and with it the balance of power in the Holy Land. The fate of the kingdom hung in the balance. A lesser man would have remained within the safety of his palace walls, issuing commands from afar. Baldwin IV, however, did what few would have dared. He ordered his men to carry him into battle. And so it was that the king, weakened, blind and ravaged by disease, was lifted upon a royal litter and placed at the vanguard of his army. The sight was one that would forever be etched into history. Jerusalem's young ruler, his body failing, yet his resolve unshaken. Upon his brow, the crown of his ancestors gleamed beneath the golden sun. Across his lap, his sword lay unsheathed, ready for war. The desert wind howled as Baldwin IV faced the battlefield once more, and though his limbs no longer carried strength, his presence alone bore a power greater than any weapon. As his army gazed upon their fallen yet unbroken king, a fire ignited within them. An unshakable will to fight, not merely for their city, nor for their land, but for the one who refused to abandon them. This was the essence of Baldwin IV, not a warrior of flesh and blood, but a sovereign of spirit and steel, a ruler who knew that even as his body withered, his duty did not. And so, as the storm of war raged on, the Leper King lifted his unseen gaze to the heavens and rode once more into history. Two enemies, one mutual respect.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
As the banners of war fluttered in the desert winds and the clash of steel filled the air, a moment of profound recognition unfolded on the battlefield.
I will send you my physician.
Saladin al-Ayyubi, the great sultan, had faced countless enemies, yet none had struck him with such admiration as Baldwin IV. The king who, despite being consumed by disease, stood unyielding before the tides of war. Even as his body failed him, Baldwin refused to retreat, refusing to be a mere spectator in his own fate. Watching the young king at the front lines, barely able to stand, yet still leading his men with unwavering resolve, Salahuddin felt something stir within him, a rare and silent reverence. For here was a man who should have succumbed to the weight of mortality long ago, and yet he fought on, not for power nor for glory, but for his people. History tells that on that fateful day at Kerak, Saladin, after witnessing Baldwin's steadfastness, chose to withdraw his siege. Before his gathered commanders, he acknowledged the young king's indomitable will, admitting that Jerusalem could not be taken while Baldwin IV still drew breath. And so, the Sultan turned his forces away, leaving the city untouched. Though their armies clashed time and again, neither ruler ever met in person. Yet, across the fields of battle, an unspoken respect took root between them. It is said that upon the death of Baldwin's father, Saladin sent a letter of condolence, a rare gesture of sincerity from one enemy to another. It was a subtle, unspoken acknowledgement of Baldwin's place among the great sovereigns of history. For Baldwin himself, he regarded Saladin not merely as an adversary, but as a leader of honor and wisdom, a worthy opponent in a war neither had chosen, but both were destined to fight. Among their soldiers and their people, the rivalry between these two figures transcended mere conflict. It became legend, a tale of two lions battling not for conquest alone, but for their beliefs, for their people, and for the lands they swore to protect. And in that legend, a truth endures. A truth that war does not erase nobility, nor does enmity extinguish respect. Even in the darkest of times, honor can still shine.
Assalamu alaikum.
The twilight of a hero. Not long after his moral victory at Kerak, fate, ever patient, came to collect what could not be denied. For years, Baldwin IV had battled not only against men, but against time itself. His spirit had long defied the slow decay of his body, his will overpowering the affliction that sought to claim him. But no mortal can outrun the inevitable. By the time he reached his 24th year, the warrior king of Jerusalem had become but a shadow of the fearless rider who once led charges against overwhelming odds. It was on a quiet evening in 1185, beneath the fading glow of the setting sun, that the young king lay upon his bed within the stone walls of his palace. His breath had grown shallow, his once bright eyes now dulled by the creeping darkness of his affliction. Yet even as life waned within him, his thoughts did not rest upon himself. His mind still wandered the streets of Jerusalem, still longed to preserve the land he had sworn to protect. He had done what he could. He had arranged for a successor, a child, in hopes that the fragile kingdom might endure beyond him. He had fought until his body could fight no more, and now, as the final hour approached, there was nothing left but peace. Soft prayers rose from the chapel halls beyond his chamber, a gentle murmur of devotion filling the silent corridors. The guards outside his door stood solemn, their faces downcast, their hearts heavy with grief they dared not voice. They had seen their king fight 1,000 battles, against enemies, against fate, against his own failing body. But now they could only bear witness to his final struggle, the one war no warrior could ever win. As the last light of the day faded beyond the horizon, Baldwin IV closed his eyes for the final time. His face, though worn with suffering, was calm, at peace. as though even death itself had bowed in reverence to his courage. Jerusalem fell into hushed mourning. The news spread like a cold wind through the holy city, slipping through alleyways, across markets, into homes both great and humble. Priests whispered prayers, knights stood with heads bowed, and the people wept in silence. For though Baldwin IV had never lived free of pain, though his days were brief, he had burned brightly, a beacon against the darkness. And as his people gazed up at the night sky, it felt as if a great star had flickered and faded from existence. Yet his light had not truly vanished. For the courage he had shown, the sacrifices he had made, the legend he had become, these would never be forgotten. Baldwin IV, the Leper King, had defied despair, defied fate, and in doing so, became eternal. An eternal legacy. Baldwin IV had drawn his final breath, and within just 2 years of his passing, Jerusalem fell to Saladin's forces. The walls he had defended, the land he had sworn to protect, all were lost to the tides of history. Yet, the legacy of the Leper King did not crumble with the city he once ruled. His story did not fade into oblivion. It became legend. Through the ages, across the pages of time, the tale of Baldwin IV has been told and retold, not as a tragedy, but as a beacon of defiance against the cruelty of fate. His life, though brief, became a testament to the unyielding strength of the human spirit, an inspiration to all who have faced hardship and refused to surrender. His legacy does not live in stone monuments, nor in the relics of kings, but in the hearts of those who choose courage over despair, honor over fear. His life teaches us that true greatness is not measured by the length of one's years, nor by the perfection of one's form, but by the unwavering resolve to stand firm in the face of darkness, to fight even when all hope seems lost.
We have decided that you shall take command.
He was a king not of power, but of purpose, not of conquest, but of conviction. I am Optimus Prime, and I tell this story so that the world will never forget that even in the weakest of bodies, the strongest of souls can shine, that courage and sacrifice can echo beyond time, that true heroes never truly perish, for their light is eternal. May the spirit of Baldwin IV live on in all who seek justice, in every age, in every world, in every universe.